on the conviction of the former governor of Delta State, James Ibori, in London. There was so many responses and perspectives, reactions, even from our anti-corruption agency here in Nigeria. But we'll take a background report now before we go over to our guest and begin looking at the matter. But here's a background report on it.
It started about 5 years ago, on the 12th of December 2007, with an arrest by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) at the Kwara State Lodge in Asokoro, Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Former Governor Ibori was first arraigned before a federal high court in Kaduna State in 2007 on a 170-count charge of corruption, theft of public funds, abuse of office, and money laundering by the EFCC under the leadership of Malam Nuhu Ribadu. While former Governor Ibori served, there was no federal high court in his state. But 2 years after the charges were preferred against him, he won the battle to transfer his case to the newly set up federal high court in Asaba, Delta State. On the 17th of December 2009, that court, presided over by Justice Marcel Awokunleyin, discharged and acquitted him of all 170 charges. If he thought he was home and dry, he was mistaken, because on the 13th of April 2010, about 3 months after President Goodluck Jonathan took over as acting president, his case file was reopened, and a new allegation that he embezzled 40 billion naira of Delta State government shares in Oceanic Bank to guarantee over 44 billion naira facility granted Ascot Offshore Nigeria Limited by Intercontinental Bank was pressed against him. He was subsequently declared wanted by the EFCC, and although former Governor Ibori went to court to seek redress, he refused to surrender to the EFCC. These developments made President Jonathan to order the then Inspector General of Police, Mr. Ogbonaya Onovo, to launch a manhunt for him.
I'm sure you're aware that during the last judgment, I was not even here. Because I just go about my business, Sometimes when Professor Thomas will tell me, they have court cases, I say, which one is that one again? They are going to court again. Which one is this court again? Then they will explain to me, is this one, that one? I say, okay, good luck. There was no time allowed me to disown me.
Eventually, he escaped to Dubai. On the 13th of May 2010, he was arrested by agents of Interpol based on an international arrest warrant issued by the United Kingdom government in respect of money laundering charges. Former Governor Ibori was handed over to UK authorities in Dubai and extradited to the UK on the 15th of April 2011, about a year after he was arrested, after a legal battle that went all the way to the Arabian Apex Court. He was finally arraigned in June 2011. Shola Sheyeli, Channels Television News.
Well, there you have some background report on that by correspondent Shola. Well, let's get to Abuja studio where Innocent Chukwuma is standing by. He's a criminologist to join us on this matter. Morning, Innocent, are you there?
Yes, hi Chamberlain.
Okay then, but it's, looking at this background report, and when that news hit the airwaves, there was so much reaction, even back home here, such that it prompted anyone to ask, what were we doing in the first instance? How come that conviction came outside the shores of this country when it all started here, as they say?
Well, Chamberlain, the conviction of Ibori by the London court is both a welcome development and, as you said, a sad commentary on our judiciary and resolve as a country to fight corruption in Nigeria. As the clip that was shown earlier indicated, these same cases were brought before Nigerian courts, and particularly the one in Asaba set him free. And now, on the same or similar charges, a court abroad has done the work for us, which raises the question, what is our court doing? What are they doing in fight against corruption? What is the EFCC doing? Because if you look at the strategy that was used in the UK court, when they realized that they couldn't really convict him on corruption because of issues of evidence around it, then they focused on money laundering, because the money laundering laws across the world today has imposed the onus of proof on the accused, because all that is required to do is to ask somebody who is accused of laundering money or corruptly enriching himself to explain how he came about his wealth. You know, so it raises issue about how EFCC files its cases. In this country, you find in situations where over 130 charges are filed based on one single evidence. And if the court strikes that out, it means all the charges go with that. So one would look at a situation where EFCC will learn from this particular ruling that in charging people, you perhaps need to separate the cases. You have cases on corruption and you have cases on money laundering, because corruption is actually very difficult to prove. If you look at how the organized crime groups were smashed in the US, the Al Capones of this world, it was not on egregious cases like murder or torture. It was actually on tax evasion, because when they realized that it was really difficult, because within these groups there's this bond, nobody rats on the other. So you need to have a nimble approach that will enable you to use different strategies to try them. But beyond the judiciary and the EFCC in particular, you have other agencies of government, in fact all the organs of government that are accomplished in all these cases where corruption have not really been established and people taken to jail for what they did.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, time and again, different leadership of the commission come in and then demonstrate this perhaps intention or resolve, if you will, to fight corruption. But now you highlighted the fact that we've got other anti-corruption agencies, yet so much impediment. What else is it that they need to do to instill that confidence in Nigerians that they can do the job, other than just talk tough in papers?
Well, to fight corruption effectively requires an interagency cooperation, an interdisciplinary approach to it. It's not something that can be left to one agency alone, however strong or effective that agency is. The first thing is that the number one citizen in the country has to set the example, the force of personal example in all jurisdictions where corruption has been fought effectively. You have always had a symbol, somebody whom through his lifestyle, through his work, you can say this is a symbol that some people can look forward to. In the last, I think, years or so, we have been hearing about fighting corruption in this country. We have not seen any person, be it political or even a legislative or judiciary, who can symbolize the fight. Obasanjo didn't do that. He was more of preachment, but his private lifestyle and activities in government didn't inspire that confidence. The person that came closest to that was Yar'Adua, but for his illness. And in the case of the current government and the current president, the government itself is a product of corruption, and it has sustained itself as corruption. So it doesn't inspire confidence on any person in this country wanting to do that. Look at what is coming out of the House of Rep. Now, beyond that symbol, which the executive, i.e. the president, has to show, you also have to look at the parliament, because there is need for an effective legal framework to fight corruption. It's not just passing the EFCC Act, but there are also handmade legislations that need to go side by side with that. One that has been lacking in this whole effort is the whistleblowers protection law. If I come forward to report a case of corruption, say for instance I am in public service and somebody within the ministry, a minister or a permanent secretary, is engaging in acts of corruption, if I come forward to give the information, what protection do I have? The National Assembly has failed to do that. Look at the Public Procurement Act, which was passed, that requires a commission, a separate agency, to go through all contracts in this country before they are approved. successive government, beginning with Yaradua, has failed to inaugurate that commission. Now we are hearing that the government wants to go abroad to appoint people who will help it to scrutinize contracts. That cannot work. And we also in civil society must also not exempt ourselves, because we have somewhatly become complacent. We have somewhatly agreed that this thing perhaps may not be one. And then our excuse is that the laws or the legal framework is not enabling. In other jurisdictions, they have used what they call monitoring lifestyle changes. You know, we know persons in government when they came into the position.
Let me
2 months or years down the line, they have come with stupendous riches. So
let me come in there, pardon me to butt in.
Focus on these people.
But on the one hand, I mean, I'm not sure we can actually say the government is a product of corruption, because if the courts have so ruled that it was validly elected, to that extent, we can say it's legit. But then, speaking about the civil society groups and Nigerians on roles and responsibilities, if you will, in this matter, are we doing enough? Because it's in the laws there that the banks have got to inform the commission, and then there's agreement with the British government about cooperation legally. Are we taking advantage of all of those? Society also playing the role. When you see something going on wrong, do we point it out? Yes, vis-a-vis the whistleblower policy which you talked about also.
Yeah, I'm quite upfront that we in civil society have not in fact done enough. If you compare what we're doing here with other jurisdictions, say for instance Philippines, where they have used this whole monitoring of lifestyle changes approach of politicians to advance their anti-corruption fight. A number of us have hinged it on a lack of adequate legal framework. For instance, the Code of Conduct Bureau and the whole issue of public officers filing their assets, that we have no right of access to those things that they have filed. And recently even the commission itself have come to say that even in the environment of the Freedom of Information Act, there is still no right of access to that, which needs to be tested in court. But in spite of these legal framework challenges that we have, we still can do enough. And by civil society, it goes beyond the NGOs that we see, and to also look at communities where these individuals that enrich themselves in government come from. Look at the clips you showed. In all the court appearances Ibori had in Nigeria and the early phases of his trial in the UK, you saw people from his communities coming to rally around them. And the whole belief is that, oh, the government is a no man's land. People can go there, steal, and then come and develop their communities. So we need a very different approach to this, one that will make people realize, yes, he might sink borehole or do this or that to you, but ultimately, these development programs are a right to you if you look at a right-based approach to community development. So there's a whole raft of issues, a whole raft of communities to be brought into the fight against corruption, and not just the executive alone. I agree with you. But I still maintain that the executive, especially the president, has to show that force of personal example around which everybody else would rally.
Would you say that, since you're looking at society there and their response to allegations of corruption when government individuals are involved, would you say then that we should embark on an enlightenment campaign or maybe an education campaign as to the rights of people and what you expect from their government?
Precisely. Actually, we have an agency that is statutorily positioned to lead in that campaign, which is the ICPC. And I must say ICPC has been disappointing in this whole process. It may well be because of their legal framework that says a retired Supreme Court judge must lead it, or a retired justice from the Court of Appeal. And you look at when people retire from Court of Appeal or Supreme Court in Nigeria, how old are they? 70 years. After 70 years, will somebody come with the kind of charisma and leadership you need to actually carry out a revolution? Because fighting corruption in this country, which is very deep-seated, requires a revolutionary approach. And that was why Ribadu, with his youth, was able to make some difference in EFCC, which has been lacking in the case of ICPC. So ICPC is statutorily positioned to lead this enlightenment campaign. Earlier on, it started with setting up anti-corruption clubs in high schools and the universities. I don't know how far that has gone, but it needs to work more closely closely with CSOs, especially community-based organizations, where these people, come from. Because every politician in this country, every person who has corruptly enriched himself, people could see that from his local communities where he emerged, especially those who are elected or appointed. From the day he's appointed, people know the kind of lifestyle they were living. And a few months or years down the line, people can tell you the difference that has happened. And it's mobilizing at that level that can create the traction that we need to really fight this problem.
Okay, let's look at it from the angle of the judiciary, for instance. In 2009, a case of AFCC brought about 170 count charge against the former governor of Delta State, Mr. James Ibori. But that case was dropped because, according to the UK government, they were asking Nigeria to enter an agreement, a prisoner transfer agreement. But Nigeria was like, the then CJN was like, unless the case against Ibori was dropped, that could not go on. What does that say of the judiciary?
I'm not sure I heard you very well, but I think I alluded to the question you raised in my earlier submission, that the nature of the cases that EFCC filed also create a problem for it in actually winning the case. Lumping all these charges together under one framework lends them open for the cases being dismissed if they could be punctured or faulted at one level. Nothing stops EFCC from filing different cases, looking at different issues. Yes, somebody is accused of corruption, but proving corruption is much more difficult, especially when you are up against people who have more resources than you. But then you can also file one looking at money laundering, and the legal framework is such that if somebody is in possession of a certain amount of money that he or she could not prove that they are from legitimate sources, that is enough to actually seize such monies. But then in the capacity of judiciary to actually handle this case is also a challenge. There have been talks in the past about creating special courts to handle this. Even the current Chief Justice of Nigeria said that early in the days of his appointment. I don't know how far they have gone with that.
Well, the question that Nyota was asking was bordering on the alleged complicity of the judiciary in stalling Ibori's case, and the fact that they had demanded that if there was going to be some prisoner transfer case, it would have been on the grounds that the charges against former Governor James Ibori were dropped. But be that as it may, the EFCC has said that he most likely, if he returns to Nigeria, will have to face another trial on also some other charges around here. What do you make of that?
Well, I hope that they do that, and that is not an afterthought coming after this flurry of criticism that how come the same cases that were filed in Nigeria, we got nothing out of it. But then there's the issue of double jeopardy to deal with. If indeed he has been found guilty of such charges in a UK court and is about to be sentenced, coming again to try him on the same charges may amount to double jeopardy. So I don't know how they deal with that, or they'll find other angles to pursue. But if they have evidence and they have all that it takes to conclusively prosecute him, I welcome it, because we shouldn't let anybody who corruptly enrich himself in this country get away with his loot.
But what do we expect now? Because there are all kinds of suggestions, talk out there at the moment that perhaps he could not have acted alone in Nigeria here. And then leadership at different levels. Do we expect people to come forward and make statements or act in a certain way to demonstrate actually that we're actually serious about fighting corruption in this country, other than what the EFCC has said?
Yeah, I agree with you. For a top government official like that to have looted the kind of amount they are talking about, people must have aided him. Of course, there was a commissioner of finance in Delta State who had supervision over the finances of the state from where he took this money. And of course, other government officials. The current governor of Delta State was himself the secretary to the Delta State government when Ibori was there. And these are the other angles the EFCC could actually look. Because if you look at the nature of conviction in the UK court, it was obtained through plea bargaining. And usually when you go into a plea bargaining, it's a give and take. It may well be that in accepting to plead guilty over this offense, they may have traded off some people whom the EFCC can actually go after in pursuing the case. So I agree with you that he might not have acted alone, being a governor. There are aides around him, there are special advisors, special assistants, and in particular the Commissioner of Finance, the Accountant General, or Auditor General, or whatever they have over the financial control system of Delta State that may have worked with him in looting the state, and those people should be brought to book.
Well, do you think this conviction would be like an impetus to the anti-corruption agencies in the country, in Nigeria?
I have a problem hearing you.
I'm saying, do you think that this conviction will act as an impetus to the anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria to deal with other cases, especially with those cases of those that are going around on bail?
Yeah, I agree with you that the laws are lax. I don't think people who stole the kind of amount we are talking about, such charges should be considered as bailable. Whereas if people do other things, they are actually considered a capital offense. I see no reason why corruption in this country cannot be classified as a capital offense, given the havoc it has wreaked in our country. The only reason why we are where we are today is because of corruption. So I think corruption should be upgraded to a capital offense. I don't buy into death sentence, but it should be made a sentence that on conviction somebody should do life, should serve life. And with that, this whole bailing after 2 days, which is like a slap in the wrist, as some people have described it, would stop. Because they know that whatever you have, they are charged against, 2 days later they will be released. And another thing that also needs to be addressed is the rules of procedure that allows them to file all these frivolous applications that lengthen the trial process. I can't see why within 6 months or max 1 year a corruption case cannot be concluded if the prosecution have all the evidence and the defense are ready to defend whoever is being charged. So we should have review our anti-corruption laws in this country, firstly, to make it a capital offense, and also remove all these frivolous applications. The Lagos State government has actually done it through its review of procedure. This whole issue of front-loading, whatever you have in this case, file it at the time you are doing, so that this whole after filing you go and file an application to withdraw this or that should not happen again. And they should set a deadline for the cases to be concluded. Of course, granting all the due process that the defendant needs to defend himself. But like I said, within a year, I can't see why a case where the parties are prepared cannot be concluded.